Hello, welcome back to Mo's Minute. So, we are here today at Hills of Eternity Memorial Park, and we are visiting the grave of Wyatt Earp, who is probably one of the most famous people buried in this area. Now, I want to apologize right now if I don't give Mr. Earp justice, because there are a lot of details to his life, a lot of things that people just don't know, a lot of things that aren't really on the historical record, and yeah, so I'm going to do my best, but I do want to apologize if I don't do Mr. Earp justice. So, Wyatt Earp was born in Monmouth, Illinois in 1848. And now you're going to ask how he came out here. Well, Wyatt Earp went all over. His dad, actually, Nicholas Earp, did a wagon train, like right after he was born. And so the wagon train brought them to Kansas. So that was how he left Illinois. And after that, he and his brothers hopped around to different boom towns. He went to Deadwood, he went to Dodge City, he went to Wichita. By trade, he was a lawman. And it's pretty convenient that he was a lawman because he was also a pimp. And he got arrested for pimping in a couple of these boom towns. He was married 4 times, but almost all of these marriages were common law because he didn't believe really in ceremonies or divorce. And a lot of his wives, probably not Josephine, but his other 2 wives were former prostitutes. His second common law wife, Sally, actually owned a brothel. And that was where he was a pimp. That was in Wichita. And so he was a police officer in Wichita, but also kind of a pimp. And then he married the lady who owned the brothel. And yeah, so he was a guy. And so he went around to different boom towns. Deadwood, like I said, Dodge City, Wichita. Obviously, he went to Tombstone. So the movie Tombstone is a great movie. It's also pretty accurate. Some of the timing is off for dramatic purposes. His brother Morgan died after the OK Corral. But it's actually pretty accurate. So, in his quest to restore law and order to the boomtowns of America, he also found love in gambling and playing cards and shootouts. And, he was a man of many interests. And so how he met Doc Holliday was somebody robbed a store or something in Dodge City. And being the assistant city marshal or whatever of Dodge City, he decided to go after him. And he chased this guy all the way to Texas. And this guy that he knew from another stint in another boomtown was like, oh, here, ask Doc Holliday about that dude because they gambled together. And Doc Holliday said, oh yeah, that guy went that way. And so Wyatt Earp chases this guy that way. And then Doc Holliday's like, you know what? I'm bored. I think I'll come too. And so he followed Wyatt Earp chasing this dude. And Wyatt Earp and this dude got into a little shootout. And Doc Holliday stepped in and saved Wyatt Earp's life. And they were friends ever since. It's a truly touching little story. And so, yeah, that's Wyatt Earp, a lawman with varying tastes for things that were illegal at the time, and hence by the liquor and the playing cards and all sorts of things that are in decorating his tomb. So he went to Tombstone because his older brother Virgil Earp got a job as a lawman in Tombstone. And then Wyatt Earp's like, hey, I think I'll come too, because, he liked to hop around to different boomtowns. And his job in Tombstone actually was not to be a lawman. He was a stagecoach rider for Wells Fargo. But one thing that brought him to all these different boom towns is he was always chasing this group of outlaws called the Cowboys. And he followed, like, so half of his reason for going from Wichita to Dodge City to that little town in Texas to Tombstone to that other place later is he was always chasing these cowboys. And so that was the shootout at the OK Corral, was between Wyatt Earp and the Cowboys. And the Cowboys killed his little brother Morgan Earp a few months after the OK Corral. So then Wyatt Earp at that point was kind of out for vengeance. Um, it's remarkable that in all of his shootouts with these Cowboys, he never got shot. So there was always like this mystique about him. He was like this mysterious guy because he was involved in all these shootouts and never got shot. His brother was maimed. His other brother was killed. Doc Holliday got hit. But Wyatt Earp never got shot. So, like I said, and he had a few common law wives. So if you remember in Tombstone, he was married to a woman named Maggie Blaylock. That is true. But she kind of hated him. And she wanted a divorce. He wouldn't give it to her because he didn't believe in divorce. But at the same time, he was going off with Josephine Marcus, whom he called Saggy, but she actually hated being called Saggy. He just called her that, I think, to piss her off. They had an interesting dynamic. And so Maggie Blaylock killed herself. And that gave him the freedom to like really pursue things with Josephine Marcus. And the two of them continued. In the movie, she's an actress. She said she was an actress. There is no proof whatsoever that she was an actress. And people who knew them used to say that she liked to exaggerate things. So she probably was not an actress, but we'll never really know for sure. And the same is true of a lot of things in her life. Um, so they did their little thing and they went off to different boom towns together. He was always trying, it seems like he was one of those guys that was always trying to find like the next big scheme to get rich, because he was trying to open up gold mines too. And he usually wasn't very profitable at that. But one of the reasons why is because Josephine for sure had a major gambling problem. So it seems like they may have found some success in gold mines down in Southern California, but she gambled away all the profits. So Wyatt Earp was always looking for someone to tell his story, especially towards the end of his life, because he died in 1929. So he lived a pretty long life. And he was always looking for someone to tell his story. But until like westerns really hit it off, no one was really interested. And so, they ended up settling down closer to Southern California. And so when Western movies were being made, like he really got in with the Western crowd. He was friends with John Ford. He was friends with Tom Mix. Tom Mix was a pallbearer at his funeral. And he was friends with another Western actor whose name I can't remember, but it started with William, and who was also a pallbearer at his funeral. And these were all Western actors, and Wyatt Earp was like, oh, hey, I can be a consultant on your film because I know all about how things were back then. I was kind of, in the middle of it. And so he finally found someone to tell his story around the time that he died. But, from most people who knew them, they weren't exactly fond of telling the truth. So it's hard to tell what's true these days because a lot of what they said themselves was probably over traumatized. And yeah, so that's Wyatt Earp. When he died in 1929, they were buried here, obviously. They didn't spend much time in San Francisco. They did spend some time here, but Josephine Marcus was basically raised here. So this was originally her family's plot. And when he died, she decided, although her intent may have been more self-serving than you might be led to believe, but she decided that she wanted to protect it from grave robbers. And so it wasn't, so that's why there's a different name on here. It says Wyatt Stop. And, yes. So, but that didn't really do any good because it was still the target of grave robbers. This tomb, as you can see from around here, is like the only new tombstone in this entire plot because of how many times it's been stolen. There's actually one of the original tombstones is in the Colma Historical Museum. Another one turned up in Fresno. Like the tombstone has been stolen multiple times. At one point, someone dug in to pick out to actually steal his ashes because she had him cremated. And when they couldn't determine which ashes were his, they just took the tombstone. So, I mean, it's kind of relevant that we're doing this today because recently in the news there was a guy like in Pennsylvania named Gerlach stealing, like robbing a bunch of graves. So, yeah. So Wyatt Earp has been a target for grave robbers as well. But he's got this tombstone now, and it seems to be staying put for a while. So yeah, that is the grave of Wyatt Earp. He is really interesting. There's so many little details and stuff that no one really knows is true. I guess even in his death, he's a man of mystery. But yeah, thank you for tuning in. Bye.